you're just talking to yourself on a Zoom meeting.
No, for sure.
And you have to be so much more animated than you have to be in real life. I'm swinging my arm, I'm so loud and like talking with my hands.
Because with stand-up, it's so much of an art form of trying to like set something up and punchline and then hearing the crowd react. But I think having humor like in just your everyday life is such a gift, and it brings people closer to you. It gives them, allows them to kind of take down their walls on things and to just enjoy your company more.
The closest times that I've ever felt in my relationship with Jesus is when I was out there doing things for other people.
Beautiful humans, welcome back to another episode of the I Like Birds podcast. I'm your host, Zach Rippey, and as you know, we have the show and the mantra and the title that goes Jesus, Jokes, and a Little Bit of Country. And I'm so excited because today we're going to dive into those things with a comedian that is local in town who I've known for years, that we've done many shows together, that I'm just so proud of, and just I love talking to this brother, and he has his own podcast as well. So you're going to be in for a real treat. We're going to get real about the comedy scene. We're going to get real about some things going on in the country. We're going to get real about what it's like to have faith in God while being in the art form of stand-up comedy. It's going to be a good conversation that you're not going to want to miss. Before we dive into that, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. This is a great platform that we talk about Christian content, and we have a lot of great guests on to share their testimonies and their stories, and we just encourage you to grow in your faith as we grow in our faith. So thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate that. And this show would not be possible if it wasn't for Cozy Earth. All right. Cozy Earth is one of my favorite new brands that we're partnering with. They have the most incredible bath sheets. I'm talking, when I say bath sheets, I didn't even know what this was until I received this bath sheet. It is a towel for somebody that's like Shaquille O'Neal. All right. It is that big. It is that beautiful. It is that cozy. And you wrap yourself in this towel and you feel like you are living the good life, the lavish life. And I have to tell you about these bath sheets. They're incredible because you can wrap yourself in luxury, made with a blend of cotton and bamboo viscose. They're soft, they're absorbent, and thoroughly crafted for your comfort. And like I said, they're generously sized. All right. So you don't have to worry about, can you dry all the way off with this towel or not? No, you can dry fully off with it. All right. So if you want to get your hands on one of these towels that I'm talking about, go to CozyEarth.com and you can use my promo code ILikeBirds for an additional 40% off. And not only that, I have to tell you guys about the bamboo sheet set. Our bamboo sheet set is crafted with premium viscose from bamboo, making it the softest, most breathable bedding that you'll ever own. Imagine sinking into sheets so gentle that they help you calm your mind, your body, and your soul. And they also give a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, so you can trust the quality and the care behind every single stitch. Get yours now at CozyEarth.com, promo code ILikeBirds. And if they send you a little post survey, make sure you tell them you heard about them on I Like Birds. It really helps us out. So we appreciate you doing that. Create your own sanctuary with Cozy Earth in your own cribbo. All right. Now, without further ado, I have to introduce my friend. He's a comedian. He's a funny guy. He has a new special on YouTube called I Like Your Jesus. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Michael Pasvar is in the building.
What's up, man?
Yo, good to have you here, man.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me in. The setup's nice. I was getting pumped up about that Cozy Earth. I was like, can I get these big shoulders need something big around them.
I know,
right?
Dude.
And 40% off, can't beat it.
I know, can't beat it. And it's like once you elevate your lifestyle a little bit and you start, getting quality, because I feel like when you go to Target, for instance, right, and you get a towel, it's like, man, they're just trying to get the margins. They're trying to get as many out as possible to people. But when you get somebody that is making a towel with love, and that's just what they focus on, that's what they do, you start to enjoy the quality of
Absolutely.
That. It's like a marksmanship, you know?
Yeah. We can all use a little bit of Cozy Earth in our life, I think.
Come on, buddy. Man, you're a funny guy. You've been doing stand-up comedy how many years?
That's kind of a loaded question. So
I know, right?
I think I'm at if you combined all the years, it's probably like 12-ish. So I started when I was in college. So I started in 2007. But I didn't really, I wasn't like doing it all the time or anything like that. And then I came home, I graduated, moved back to the DFW area. And that was like December 2000 or January 2009. And I was hitting it pretty hard. Then around like 2013-ish, I just stopped doing it. So completely stopped. There was no I'm quitting. It was just kind of just happened. I was real busy with my career. We were about to have our first baby. I was volunteering and coaching. And it was like, something's got to kind of give. And comedy just would end up happening. And then probably like 3 or 4 years later, I started doing it again. And ever since that, so we're about 8 years since that started happening again, I've been like doing it nonstop. So I would say if you like kind of add it all together, probably around 12 years.
That's solid, man. And I took a few years off from 2020 to 2023. And I would do shows if they would book me during that time. But I also was writing speeches and I was writing jokes and I was still working the penmanship and I was still doing the podcast. So it's like I wasn't, pursuing stand-up full-heartedly at that time, but I still kind of include it when people ask me the years. I'm like, I've been doing this since 2018,
Yeah,
I
sure.
also feel like once you start stand-up, you never really like stop being a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, I know. It's just one of those things where to me, like, I was like, well, I didn't do it I didn't do it at all. I mean, I guess I could count that, but then I'm like, well, we're 17 years in, bro. Like, you should have.
yeah, you want lower years until you hit that mark of like success.
I don't want to sit there and be like, you're 17 years in, you're still playing bars. Like, what's going on?
No, that's true. That's a good perspective. I actually thought that same thing the other night. I did a show for the first time actually at open, what's it called? Mic Drop Comedy in Plano, Texas. Shout out that club. They just did awesome renovations. It's in a beautiful plaza. Brittany, the booker over there, she's great. And just enjoyed the show. Really loving atmosphere. Very supportive. Crowd was hot. It was a good time for a Tuesday night,
Yeah.
And when I was there, I'm not really doing a bunch of shows in the DFW like I was. So when I pull up, I don't know a lot of the comedians anymore. So the comedians that are new, they're not really new. They're just new to me. They'll ask me the question. They'll be like, yo, how long you been doing stand-up? And I'm like, man, since 2018, 7 years, and then it's like 7 years. Where are you? I don't see you anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard for me to say that. Sometimes I don't even want to answer that question because like you're saying, it's loaded.
Yeah. I just kind of pretty say like a little over 10, because that's kind of where it's at. Like, cause I didn't take it. So I was theater major and I've been doing some kind of performance since I was 10 years old. So when I got into college, it was just something that I kind of always wanted to try. And I had some downtime, so I tried it. But it's like I did an open mic April 2007 for the first time. Then like school got out like 2 weeks later. So it's like I want going to that mic again. And then I went and did an open mic in Arlington that summer. And then I maybe did one other one. And then I didn't go up again until like March of 2008. You know what I mean? So I'm not like counting those days. The first time I ever went on stage was 17 years ago. But when I first like started taking it like seriously, even that first like 3 or 4 years that I was in Dallas, I was taking it serious, but I only booked shows if they booked me. I wasn't reaching out. I wasn't like marketing myself, and I was getting booked pretty decently. Like I worked all the I was on the Hyenas roster, their comedy club in DFW. At that time, they had 3 clubs. So I was working all 3 of those clubs. I would work the Improv every now and then. And then there was like a couple of colleges that would book me. And you know what I mean? And so, but I wasn't like trying. Now, dude, I'm like a Jedi. Like, I'm like creeping on pages, like figuring out who bookers are and stuff. Like I'm doing all this like research to see like, okay, I saw that this guy posted a flyer about this show and he's posted it 3 times. That means he's probably the one that hosted. Let me Facebook message you. Hey, do you run this show at such and such brewery in, East Texas? Yeah, I do. Cool, man. I work all over the state and all over the country. Love to come out. So now here's my EP. Like that's how I find like a majority of my shows is me just being a creep. Like I'm just creeping on people's Facebook. Being a creep. Yeah, just creeping on, like trying to figure things out.
I saw you recently did the Kessler Theater.
Yeah, I did the Kessler Theater.
Is that how you got that show? How did that come about? Because I feel like that's a big deal to get your name on a marquee in one of the most historic venues in Dallas.
Yeah, it was. I saw that they had been doing that they did comedy a couple times last year. And I just saw it come up, and I was trying to figure out who booked it, and then I recognized one of the names of the guys that post on the Kessler. I was like, I think that guy works at the Kessler because I've heard his name attached to like some big music projects because like some mutual friends that we have. So I just messaged him. I was like, hey, how are we not doing comedy? Blah blah blah. Like didn't really hear anything back, and then when my special dropped, I was like sending the special out to like different bookers, and he was one of them. And then he just messaged me and was like, hey, we're doing a show on the 24th of January. You want to do a spot? It pays this much. And I was like, yep, I'm in. Right. And that dude was probably one of the coolest shows I've ever done.
Yeah, dude. I could tell. I saw the energy that you were putting out there about the show. Linda, Des, Des O'Neill was putting out that energy about like how much of a good time it was. So that's awesome.
The
man.
crowd, it was first off, like, have you ever been to the Kessler?
No, I haven't. I've heard good things though.
It's got a bottom area and then it's got a balcony, but the balcony is not like a balcony that goes over like a traditional theater. It just like kind of wraps around.
Okay.
So there's seats up there, like lounge seats pretty much. No one was up there, but the whole bottom was full. And what was really cool is that my kids came to that show.
Oh, that's awesome, bro.
So they've never came to a show before. When I got it booked, I asked my wife, I was like, you want to come to this show? Because she comes to like one show a year.
I feel that, dude.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why? I mean, I don't go to her job. You know what I mean? So I don't expect her to like show up to all my stuff. Like
That's a great
that's
perspective.
just weird, you know? Like
Yeah.
everyone's like, why is Cindy not coming to this? It's like, why would she? You know, like I'm not hurt. My feelings aren't hurt by this, but the big ones I want her to be at, right?
Yeah.
So she came to that show and we were kind of talking, and then I noticed on the website that because it's a concert venue, so they're not going to have 18 and up type stuff. It's not a bar, it's not a club. So I was like, it's all ages. I was like, you want to see if I bring like the kids to this? And she goes, I mean, what set are you going to do? Or whatever. And I was like, I can. It's only 15 minutes. I can make it a set that's appropriate for them. I was like, but how do we do? I don't know where I'm going up in the lineup, everything like that. So luckily, the guy that was hosting that went right before me, he's clean. So I was like, why don't y'all just come and y'all bounce after my set? Because I don't know. Because if they would have, I didn't know where Linda was in the lineup. They could have seen Linda's
For
set,
sure, 100%.
right? But I was super nervous. That was the most nervous I have been for a show in years. Because it's like you want to show off a good show for your kids.
I know, right?
They've
only heard about you doing comedy.
Yeah,
They haven't seen.
They don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. They're just like, Dad has a show. Okay, Dad's not doing bedtime with us tonight. He's just going to a show. So that was super cool. They loved it. My youngest. It was funny because my youngest was the one that was all about it leading up to it. She's the reason why they got to come because we had decided on Wednesday. The show was a Friday. We decided on Wednesday they weren't going to come. Right, like it was like the logistics of it. We live in like North DFW. My youngest had a basketball practice from 5 to 6. My wife works pretty much downtown, and she was going to the office that day. And I had to be there at like 6:30. So it's like an hour from the basketball practice. And I was like, well, I don't even know how I'm going to get there if you're at work. And so it's like my wife's going to drive all the way back and then all the way there. Anyway, so it just didn't really. And I was kind of nervous about them seeing it and is it appropriate? So. On Thursday night, we're sitting at dinner and she's like, Dad, I'm excited about your show tomorrow. And I was like, I realized you even remember that this was happening. And I told her, I was like, well, we decided you're not going to come. And she was so heartbroken about not going that I was like, I thought about it at night and I told my wife in the morning, I was like, just let them come. We'll figure it out. Right. So they came, she was pumped. And my oldest was just kind of like, it is what it is, if she comes. But my oldest, once it happened, she has this iPhone that doesn't have service. It essentially is more like for to use it like an iPod.
Mm-hmm.
So she can listen. It's like one of my old phones. She brought it. She was like taking pictures of my wife said she's like taking pictures of the marquee. I could hear her laugh in the audience.
That's awesome.
So it was a very cool experience.
So cool, man. I love that as a father, like to experience that because my kids have not been to a show. They've been to a live audience podcast, which was really cool because I got to be funny and on stage. I got to see that, which was really special. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that day where they get to see comedy,
Yeah.
So cool, man. You just did a special. You were talking about your special that you sent to the booker called I Like Your Jesus.
Yes, sir.
So tell me about that, man. Where does the inspiration for the name come from?
I have a bit. I'm Middle Eastern descent, so I'm half and half. My dad's from Iran. My mom is from Louisiana. All right, so I have jokes about that. But and so I just have this kind of bit that I've been doing for years where it's like this, I legitimately used to always get randomly searched like all the time. I remember one time there was a time that I got randomly searched and I did not even have anything with me. Like not even a bag. Like it was just like I was flying there and flying back. All I had was a book that I was reading. And I was like, why am I getting searched? Like I'm getting like full on. I don't have anything. I don't even have a bag. And so I like wrote this joke about how and at the end the tag is I like your Jesus, right? And it's about that. So
I think we pulled that. Let's watch that real quick.
And that's why I decided to start being peaceful about the whole airport security thing. And I decided to start carrying one carry-on item only. And that is a Christian Bible with an American flag Bible cover. That way I can be like, I come in peace. Thank you for converting me to your very nice religion. I like your Jesus.
That's why you named it that, because that's your A joke. That's a house laugh joke.
That joke's has gotten a lot of play over the years. And it was my merch for a while. So my merch used to be this like black and white outline picture of me. It's funny because it was filmed in we took the picture in my office at my job, and it's a picture of me holding a Bible, and it's got it open. I'm kind of giving like a little grin or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, but it's not. It's like a negative vibe. You know what I mean? Like it's like more like an outline of me. They took that picture and they made like an outline, silhouette, of me. And then so it's got the "I like your Jesus" on it. And so I just thought that, and I retired that joke like 3 years ago. I don't do that. I haven't done that joke in years because it was my wife made fun of me. She came to a show maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and she's like, "If I hear you do that joke one more time, I will boo you. I will boo. I will stand up. I will boo or whatever." And I was like, "Girl, I'm doing it until I sell the merch out because I have all this merch for it too." Yeah. And she goes, "I'll buy the merch. Like, I'll like,
oh my God, she's brutal.
Like, I'll buy your merch. Like, we're gonna buy. Like, you just like move on from it." And so I made this kind of commitment that once I sold out of the merch, I was done with that joke. So I hadn't done that joke in probably like 2 years. And then the opportunity for that special came about, and for me, I was like, I just want to kind of get rid of material on that special. I didn't have, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to use that as a special to kind of like, and maybe this wasn't the best way to do it, but it was like, I want to get rid of like my old stuff that I don't.
You want to move forward.
I want to move forward from that. So, flew out to Colorado. That's where they filmed it. We filmed it there at Looney's Comedy Corner in Colorado Springs. Sweet. Actually, we filmed it twice because the first time the audio got messed up, so we had to fly back out there. So we first filmed it in October of 2023. It was supposed to come out in spring of 2024. So I had all these shows booked, man. I'm talking, I was going like all these little random towns. Big Spring, Texas.
All these big towns. Big Springs, Texas.
San Angelo, Texas. Lubbock, Texas. Tyler, Texas. All these like random towns that had comedy shows. And I was going to, when it came out, like promote it everywhere. And then they hit me up and they're like, "Hey, we got to reshoot it." So then I flew back out in May of 2024. We reshot it. And then, which I was actually kind of happy that happened because it gave me a better idea of the material that I wanted on it. So, changed up, not a ton of it was changed, but there was probably about 5 minutes that I did not include on that special that I swapped with about 5 other minutes. And so, yeah.
That's cool, man.
Came out.
I mean, yeah, it came out and it started off, it got a good pop, and then they had to repost it. What happened with that?
I don't know. So it was funny so it came out, it did about like 4,000 views, which I don't know if that's good or not. I have no idea.
And what's the
open bar comedy?
Open bar comedy. Yeah. That's right. Okay.
So they've got like about 100 and something specials out right now. They're doing pretty cool. They're trying to do, so dry bar comedy is, another comedy special that's 100% clean. Open bar came out and that we want to be able to do something that, you can do whatever you want on it. And so they've been really cool. I guess they had a better audio version of it, so they took it down and put up the new one, which fine, do it as I don't have a good enough ear to hear the difference. Maybe it sounds better now. Actually, I haven't watched it since it came back. I mean, I've already seen it once.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say the better audio, because when I published mine, the first night, Crackers in Church, it was off to a great start. I mean, not a great start, but it had a lot of like engagement on the amount of people that saw it. A lot of like comments, a lot of likes, and all that stuff in the first like 120 people that watched it. But then my buddy John Jacobs, comedian friend, reached out to me saying like, "Yo, I can really enhance this audio because there's a lot of reverb in it and a lot of echoey sounds or whatever, and I can clean that up for you and you can repost it tomorrow." So the same thing kind of happened, but luckily it only happened with me within 24 hours. You know what I mean? So I was able to like post a new one, and it does sound so much better. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you rather have that quality over like the numbers and all that for stuff, which I appreciated. But I get that the same thing happened. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and I at that point, it was like, it's already done what it needed to do. Like, I've gotten a handful of bookings from it, where I reached out to people because when you can say like I just dropped a half-hour special with open bar is starting to get to the point to where people are knowing who they are. They have some pretty decent sized names that are on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That have done specials on there, and they've got like 500 something thousand followers. It's going to continue to keep growing, so we'll see what happens with it. But I'm just excited right now. I'm just doing a whole different set than what that was on that, and it's so much fun. Good. It's a lot of fun to do that. So I'm working on that. And so, yeah, that's
great, dude. Yeah. I'm at the place right now in comedy where it's like, I have like 20 minutes and I recorded 15 of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I got like 5, maybe 10 extra minutes that I can do. Cause I had like, when I was doing comedy before Christ, I would have like a lot of like dirty jokes that worked, you know, but now I had to like clean up my act a little bit. And you can't just like, you can't really replace dirty jokes with just, oh, let's just make the dirty joke clean. Cause then it's not funny. You know? So you got to like go back to the drawing board completely.
Yeah, I will say for your listeners, my special is definitely PG-13. It's not clean. Don't let the name fool you. It's not.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And I'll preface that 100%. It's not. It's real life. It's not. It is not a. I would not perform that in front of a church audience.
Yeah, it's not rated R though.
It's not rated R.
Yeah.
I don't say the F word. I don't go into like descriptive things, you know what I mean? Anything that is not appropriate. And this is how I write from that side, from that angle, is I try to write from anything that I write that is not appropriate or, you know, can be miscued as inappropriate. I try to write from the awkwardness that I feel in those situations.
That's good.
It's kind of, you know what I mean?
That's what the funny is.
Instead of the like trying to be like, so I was hanging out with this chick, you know, or whatever. Yeah. It's like, no one think, hey, you're 5, like, you know, you've seen those comics on there. Yeah. Like you're 5'6", like 295
Nobody
pounds.
believes you.
No one believes that girl was doing. And if they are, we don't want to hear about that.
And if you think about your average audience member, a lot of them are more like you than they are like that person that you're talking about. You know, there's a lot more people in the audience are married with kids that want to have fun and want to talk about the awkward parts of those elements of life. And it sounds like you're able to capture that through your just personal experience.
Yeah.
And give that to them in comedy.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is great.
So.
Did you ever feel like convicted from the Lord for calling your special I Like Your Jesus, or did you get permission from him?
I don't think I really asked.
Okay. There's that.
I didn't, you know, I don't think that I tried to market it as that.
Yeah, you didn't. It just sounds like you just took the joke, like the punchline and
took that punchline, and it was the thing to me that stood out the most from. I had no idea what I was going to call it. I almost called it the vault, because I was saying those jokes are going to go into the vault and I'm never going to use it again. Yeah. But then I was like, well, that doesn't really, no one else knows what that means. Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, there's a handful of people around this southwest region of the country that have shirts that say that on there, or koozies, you know, or whatever. So
I think it's smart you put the most famous person in the universe in your title.
I thought it was going to help with the algorithm. It did not. You know,
honestly, when people search this, my podcast might pop up.
It might. There's like some weird things that come up where I'm like, you know, even like there's this one like real soothing music thing that comes up.
Yeah.
I think it's like the second or third thing where it's just like this picture of what you know, Americans think that Jesus looks like, you know, like blonde-haired, light brown-haired Jesus.
Right.
And he's just standing there like this in the robe, and the music is just playing with water in the background. I was like, well, that's not my, you know, whatever. So
it is funny though, because recently people always ask me where we got the name I Like Birds. And I'm tired of telling them the truth. You know what I mean? Like, you know, when you just like get kind of burned out of saying the same story over and over again. So I got a new opener, and I'll eventually tell them the truth. But when people ask me now, I say, because I Like Jesus was taken. And it's just silly, but it gets a laugh, and they're like, oh, that's funny. But it's funny because I like, and then we talk about Jesus on this show. It's very much so like what we do. So it's so interesting that you called it that.
Yeah.
Very divine.
You know what's funny is you say that is like you get tired of like answering the same thing. I used to do that. So I've in my day life, not anymore. I'm in sales, but for many, many years I ran sales departments. So I ran a sales department for one company for like 6 years, and then another one for like 2 years. You get tired of answering the same questions. And sometimes I would just make things up. And I would make them up like people would be like, tell me I just want that one thing that I can do that's gonna change my income. I was like, okay, you want me? And I like look around, like I was like, you know, about to give it. I was like, you want to know the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. All right, you want to know the truth? And I'd be like, all right, what all the top producers, what we do is before we make a call to a client, we rub this rabbit's foot. Or, you know, like, I was like, what do you mean one thing? I can't tell you one thing that's going to make you, you know what? I did this other thing too, is during COVID when we got, because at first we went home. And so for like a year, everything was just remote. And then it got to the point to where the office was like kind of open. And I was so tired. I ran multiple meetings a week. So I had meetings for like new hires that had been there for less than 3 months, meetings for new hires that had been there for, because we hired every quarter, new hires that had been there for 3 to 6 months, and then everyone 6 months and up. So I had a different subject that I was doing, 3 different subjects that I had to do a week, but the ones that had been there 6 months and older, there were so many of them, I couldn't have them all in one meeting. I had to like mix it up, like, you know, I had like 4 for them.
Get that.
So I'm doing like 8 or 9 Zoom meetings a week.
It's a lot.
Right. And I was like, and it was messing with my mental health, just looking at this, because you're just talking to yourself on a Zoom meeting.
No, for sure.
And you have to be so much more animated than you have to be in real life. I'm swinging my arm, you know, I'm so loud and like talking with my hands. So eventually I decided to go back into the office just on the days that I ran meetings. So 3 days a week I would come and I would be like, I'm going to still do it on Zoom, but the ones that are in the office, we're meeting in the conference room, training room, or whatever. And there'll be a camera on me. If you're not coming back to the office, it's fine. We'll sit on Zoom, but I'm not really doing it for you. I mean, y'all can hear it, but I'm doing it for the people. You know,
you got to do it for the people.
I'm doing it for the people. So we had this issue in our office, like where we would do the meetings, where it was a bad spot. So it would go in and out a lot. And I did this joke for like a year on people, and they never caught on. So anytime that it would go out and it would kick them all out, I said, okay, when they get back on, I'm going to say, and if you guys do that one thing, and I said, if you guys can do that thing, you'll all increase your income by 25%. All right, guys, great meeting. And so they would all get back on. And as soon as they come back, I was like, all right, guys, so if y'all will do that one thing, everyone's income will increase by 25%. And then I act like the meeting. They go, wait, what were you telling them? And people were like, you're like a dad joke. Like,
yeah, that's a dad thing to do.
So much fun. It was
Well, I'm glad you have fun and you do jokes outside of just the stage. I think that's important too. You know, as like somebody that has the gift of humor, is to like find the joy in that, because with stand up, it's so much of an art form of trying to like set something up and punchline and then hearing the crowd react. But I think having humor like in just your everyday life is such a gift, and it brings people closer to you. It gives them allows them to kind of take down their walls on things and to just enjoy your company more. And I even think it even bridges the gap for you to be able to like present the gospel to them in a way that's like, you know, not as much so like, you know, religious or legalist, but in a way that's very relational, you know? And I've just experienced that in my own life, to where it feels like even when I stopped doing comedy, I was like, I'm still funny. You know, I can still, you know, make people laugh at any point of the day. And that's a good place to be in. With comedy, though, I've noticed one thing since removing myself in 2020 and then kind of inserting myself back in over the last couple of years. I've noticed that a lot of comedians struggle to have faith in God, and they don't really have a relationship with Him. And they seem more cynical about faith than almost any other like realm of people I've ever encountered. Why do you think that is?
I think that, you know, I wonder if it's where we are in, like, where we do comedy at. So comedians usually try to be like the rebel, like the outsider, you know, I do it. In DFW, if you are a Christian, you are not the outsider. You are the overwhelming majority of the people that you I mean, this is the buckle of the Bible Belt. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like it's the center of it. And I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe you also have to remember a lot of comedians are degenerates. You know? I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I mean, we can go into depth with this as much as you want to, or as little as you want to. I don't know where I stand with, I mean, I know where I stand with my faith. I don't know where I stand with me in church per se. I still believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I still believe that Jesus is you know, the Savior. I still believe that He died for our sins. I still believe in God. I still believe in that. I still pray. I still listen to worship music and get emotional sometimes. Sometimes it's nice to cry. I still pray with my kids when they have big things. I still teach them. I still talk to them about Jesus. I still do that. But I'm not a very big fan right now of the church, per se, and the direction that it has gone over the last, I don't know, maybe decade. And so I can't speak for, I don't know, this is not the question you asked me at all. But I didn't want to come in here and be like, yeah, I go to church 4 times a week, whatever. And then try to talk about why other people aren't. I don't know. It's just a spot that I'm in for me personally with my faith, where my faith hasn't changed. I still believe in Jesus. I just don't really believe in the current day church, if that makes sense. And it stinks because a lot of good memories from me growing up was going to church and hanging out with my youth group, or like, going on Sunday mornings. And, sometimes it felt like you're being forced by mom to go, but other times it was like, I'm really glad we're here. Or, going to church with my wife when we were first dating or engaged and stuff like that. This is good stuff, man. I think also I got to challenge you. Have you tried many churches, or have you tried a few churches? We've tried a handful. I was listening to this podcast about 3 months ago. Are you familiar with Bent Tree Bible Church? No. Okay. Do you know who Pete Briscoe is? I don't. So he was the pastor at Bent Tree Bible Church. They're a Bible church in like the North Dallas, Carrollton, Plano area. And he was there for many years, and he left. And everyone was like, why did Pete Briscoe just leave this church? And there was never really any I don't know if there's public explanation. I don't know if there is somewhere. I've never heard it. And he has this podcast now. And he had an episode with Jeff Jones, who's a pastor out in Plano. And I've listened to this episode like 5 times because it just like resonates with me. And it's one of my buddies who kind of I don't think he feels 100% the way that I do, because he still hasn't stopped going to church, but we have a lot of conversations. He sent that episode to me. And I told him, I was like, dude, I just like wept listening to that episode, because it was exactly they articulated exactly how I feel. And it was talking about, Jeff wrote a book called Rebranding. I don't know the exact title, but essentially it was like rebranding the Christianity brand. And he's like, talks about it, how that we were given, he's like, we don't have to come up with the brand as Christians. He's like, our founder, Jesus, gave us the brand. And the brand was to be like the most radical, loving people in the world. Right. And he's like, and somewhere we lost that. And he's like, in the perception of the outside looks at us as the opposite. And he tells this whole story of how he was speaking at this pastor's conference, and he was talking about like bringing the church back to that. He's like, why does the outside world look at us as not loving? Like, he's like, Jesus said that we should be looking at as the most loving, the most caring, the most forgiving, the most giving, all these things, right? And he's speaking at this pastor's conference, and he's like, what's some words that come to mind to you guys when the outside looks at Christians? Like, what do they say? And I don't remember the words he said, but he tells this one story where this woman like raises her hand. She's like, can I speak, please? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. And she goes, I've been trying to just understand for the last 2 hours why I'm here. Like, I'm not a Christian. My friend made me come to this. And it's like, why did you make me come to this pastor's conference? Right? And what's the purpose of me being here? She goes, in that moment, when you ask that question, I realized, oh, this is why I'm here. So that I can give an honest answer of someone that is not a believer. And he's like, can I speak freely? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. I want you to speak freely. And she goes, he's like, because Christians are full of S. And she said the actual word. Mm-hmm. And he goes, and everyone just kind of laughed at her or whatever. And he goes, okay, explain. He's like, because they talk about how they're inclusive, but they're exclusive. They talk about how they love. He's like, but they're kind of mean. And while she might be wrong, we're not going to debate that or not. You know what I mean? Like, people can have feelings. Perception is reality, And he talks about it, and he's like, it's our job as Christians. He's like, it's not the world's job to fix that. He's like, if the world views us, he's like, not what other Christians view. He's like, but he's like, our whole thing that we're called to do is love. We're supposed to love our enemies. We're supposed to love everybody. He's like, and if the world looks at us as the opposite of what we are supposed to be doing. He's like, what are we doing wrong? And I was like, that's kind of what I've been thinking, you know? And so he talks, and honestly, where I should be going to church is his church, because it's what I've just came up with excuses not to go to it. It's 35 minutes away. I don't want to, whatever. Like, all the excuses that we come up in our head. But he's like, so the podcast host, Pete Briscoe, he's like, so what are you doing about it? Yeah. And he was like, because to me, he goes, the biggest thing is we want to give power to the powerless at our church. He's like, we're in an area that is, on one side of the train tracks is extremely affluent. The other, not really. He's like, so we started spending a ton of time, instead of it being all about us and about our church and, oh, this great thing and that and everything like that. He's like, we've set up classes to give people the opportunity to learn English. We've helped people. We're, doing classes for immigrant people so that they can get their citizenship. We're doing classes, we're teaching people how to feed themselves correctly, we're teaching people how to get better jobs and stuff like that. And to me, I want to be part of that. You know what I mean? Like that's something. I just feel like that in the last 10 years, I'm not going to put an exact date on it, but it just has turned into this like fight with oh my God, we're being persecuted. Cool. No, we're not. Like, just because someone disagrees, you're not being persecuted. Just love. Just show your love. Just show your love to people. And I bet you win them over. I bet you all day, every day, if you just sit I'll give you an example of that. So, my dad is from a Muslim country. Okay. I don't think he was Muslim. I'm pretty sure he wasn't. I think his family was Muslim. I'd say my dad was agnostic, if that makes sense. Like,
that means like he doesn't know what he believes, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Believes there's a higher being, but didn't
ascribe a deity to it.
Yeah, okay. But he just kind of, or he also just, I think there's someone else that told me there was another term too. He just kind of when growing up, it was just kind of that all the gods are just pretty much the same type thing, right? But he was very adamant about us going to church with my mother. Like he was the ones that didn't let us skip. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, Dad, can I stay home? Can I just stay? Like, it's 8 a.m. Like, can I just stay? Or whatever. Like, no, go to church with your mom. And he came to church. I can think like I could probably count on my hand the amount of times he came to church with us growing up. Like I can remember those times that he came like vividly.
I got you.
Because it just wasn't his thing. And I think that if we would have, like made him feel bad about it or like hit it over the head, nothing would have ever happened. Maybe like 14 years ago, I don't know how long ago it was now, maybe 12, 13 years ago, my mom started going to church with my wife and I because she was like going to this church by herself. And I was like, just come to church with me and Cindy, right? And so I had this conversation with my dad where I was like, Dad, I was like, why don't you just go to church with Mom? She doesn't have to go by herself. I was like, she said to be like essentially like a single mom at church like her entire life. And he goes, I would go to church. He's like, you guys don't ever invite me. I was like, we've always invited you, whatever. I go, so if I invite you next Sunday to come to church, you'll come to church with us, right? And he goes, sure, I'll come to church with you guys. That fool hadn't missed church in like 13 years. That dude leads his Bible studies on Wednesdays. That dude, he's never told me he got saved, but I've heard through the grapevine that he got, and I think that the approach with the church that my parents were going to, that we stopped going to that church when we moved. It's like 45 minutes away, like almost an hour. It's in Dallas, and I live up near that brewery that we did that show at. Mm-hmm. So we stopped going to that church, but that church is a love-based church.
Yeah.
And, I remember the sermons that pastor would preach when my dad started going there. I was like, God, these are the sermons that my dad needs to hear, because he's not being felt like, you're a bad person if you're not. It was just the sermons were about Christ's love, and yeah. So
that's good stuff, man. Do you feel like, you can count on the handful of times that you saw your dad go to church with you. Do you feel like you're maybe repeating that with your own children right now?
Yes and no. Yes and no. They've gone to church more times than my dad ever went to church. We do these little waves of it. We're like, we're going to this church. We're trying this. Oh, we like this church. Last year we found a church that we really liked. We were going to. Actually, they really liked, but I bit my pride and said, we'll go to that church. Right. We went to it a handful of times, and then the main pastor got popped with he was molesting some kid, or something like that. So it was some kind of, and then they had hidden it, or whatever. And so,
well, I think also with what you're saying about like the church needs to be love, and love well, and not treat outcasts like outcasts. Like obviously, like that's real and that's truth. But also I feel like there's so many churches that are doing the right thing. I would say like, I don't know the number. I'm not going to put a number on it, but I think you have to find the right church for you that lines up with your theology, that lines up with the way your heart posture is. For instance, I was going to a church in the summer or last year that I really liked. It was a plant church, and my heart started shifting to being more like outreach focused and very much so like mission focused. And I switched churches to go over to where I'm at now. Because of that heart posture change of like what was important to me in my faith, and I think the Lord will like reveal things to you as like what is important to you. So it sounds like for you, what's important to you is you want the church to represent a lot of what Jesus is teaching to the community,
Absolutely.
And it's hard to see that on like a grand scale because you only see them on like Sundays and Wednesdays, maybe,
for sure.
So, but I think there's so many more churches and Christians. Like I think Christians are the best people on the planet. To be honest, I have seen like halty Christianity, where it's like, we're better than people. I've seen that, but I've also just seen like, people giving meals when somebody has a baby. I've seen people
for sure
show up in prayer at hospitals when somebody's sick. Like I've seen the best of like the body of Christ, so it's hard for me to just like, pigeonhole like a certain group of people that go to a church that don't live out the gospel. And I think that's everywhere. I think that's the difference between religion and relationship, because religion will have you kind of in this box and putting God in a box of how you can love people and how you should treat people, while relationship with Jesus will have you like acting like him, leaning in like he does, and doing all these things. And that's where I think the whole like we need to shift up what Christianity looks like, and it doesn't need to be described as a religion; it needs to be described as a faith.
Yeah, dude. If you are only doing things because you think it's a rule book, right? Like I can, if I go to the gym and I show up and I just do, I'm just here. I'm just gonna go through the motions. I'm not gonna see any results from that, right? If I just show up and I just like go through the motions, or but if I'm you have to be passionate about whatever you do, and that was actually a terrible analogy. I thought I was about to say something. Really
I know that was gonna be profound. If you bench press more than 10 reps instead of just 10, you're gonna get results.
Yeah, edit that out, please. But it is more like when there is a shift change in your heart, you will see changes like way more than just like, oh, because I go to church on Sunday. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I have a buddy of mine, more of an acquaintance that I remember growing up, that dude, his family, they were like all about Jesus. They never go to church, right? And whatever, right? They hardly ever went to church. All 3 of their sons grew up being ministers. Like they're just like, you know what I mean? And it's because they had that relationship. And like what you're talking about, And I think like for me, if I find it like I need to go to that church in Plano because I've talked about it for a month now. And I keep listening to that dude's episode because it just resonates so much with me, to where the closest times that I've ever felt in my relationship with Jesus is when I was out there doing things for other people, not going, some of these churches do like, well, you got lasers for Jesus and we don't need all that. Like, just let's go feed somebody. Let's go just love on people. You know what I mean? Like the closest I ever felt to with my faith was I used to coach basketball out in South Dallas for like 3 or 4 years. My buddy was the head of this ministry, the youth department at this ministry called His Bridge Builders. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not. And they do most of their work in South Dallas. And it's about like just like revitalizing South Dallas. and like helping these people out. Because the zip code that the neighborhood that they were in was like, I think like the 9th most impoverished zip code in the country. They didn't have grocery stores. They didn't have grocery stores. Have you heard of Bonton Farms?
No.
You never heard that? They got a lot of news stories. They started an urban farm out there so that they could teach people out there to grow their own food, so that they could, because there was no grocery stores. There was no grocery stores in that neighborhood.
Wow.
You couldn't even go to a grocery store. And so we went, and so what he decided to do is he's like, I gotta find a way to get these kids involved, man. So he came up with this sub ministry, a part of their main ministry called Crossover Athletics. And the first year I kind of helped out with it, but not very much because I was super busy. And so the first year they had like one team. And he's like, hey man, will you come help me out this next year? So we coached these kids. And then we had like 2 teams, I think. By the time I left there, we had a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, a middle school, and a high school basketball team. A 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade football team. And then they had started baseball. And then by the time, and I started kind of getting out of it after that. But it was just this, like, doing things with those kids, man, and like seeing how much they needed people pouring into their day every single day, right? You know what I mean? It wasn't about basketball. I mean, dude, I wanted to win. Like we won some games. We're pretty good. We were a pretty good squad. But that's not what it was about. It was about teaching these kids to be men and showing them, I remember I always wanted my wife around. Like I wanted my wife was going to come to stuff no matter what, because she loved on those kids so much, right? She did so much. She put in more effort almost than I felt like that I was putting in, right? Like just coming up with things. But I wanted them to see a man that loved his wife and what that looks like and different things. And I don't know, those moments with those kids were like, to me, that was like such a Christ-like moment of just us spending time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
We put so much effort into those kids, dude. And like, I mean, that was like 10 years ago at this point, 10, 11 years ago. I remember we had 2 kids that were like legit. Like one of them might be the best basketball player I've ever seen. No, I mean like we would go, he was point guard, and he would, in fifth grade, he saw the court like a high schooler. Like he'd see plays before they'd even develop. And like at first he was like hitting kids in the back of the head with the ball because they wouldn't even know the pass was coming. Like, he could just see things developing, right? And it took a while for them to get used to playing with him. And I was like, he's gonna go places. We had this other kid that was like legit, but he had a lot of problems, man. Like meltdowns every single practice. 2-3 meltdowns.
Like Jimmy Butler?
Like just, I mean, throw the ball in the stands, scream. And it's because he didn't know where to channel his emotions. Dude's getting dropped. This is going to the school every single day. His poor mother is working 3 jobs a day, 3 jobs to support them. He doesn't have an adult supervision. He's 11 years old. He's letting himself in every single, there's like, Mike, I have a 5th grader. My 5th grader ain't coming home by herself. Like, you know what? She's got to fend for herself till 10 o'clock at night. That's not happening, And worked on him, loved on him, worked with him, loved with him, just loved on him, loved on him, loved on him, loved on him, loved on him. And, after the first year, it's like, okay, he goes from 3 meltdowns of practice to maybe 1, and then more. Now it's like 1 every couple of weeks, then it's 1 every month, then it's whatever. He goes on, plays basketball in high school. And I get this, I don't know where someone sent me a text, and it said the guy's name is District 65A, like I don't know, like sophomore of the year. And I went nuts. I was at work. I was like, let's go. Like all of my, whatever. Like, because that kid was not even supposed to make a team. You think a high school coach was going to
put up with that? No.
And it's like, this dude's getting, recruited and, whatever. Wow. And it's just those moments. And it's like, I want that. I want more of that. I want that. I want that for whatever ministry I'm a part of, whatever. It doesn't have to be basketball, but
it sounds like discipleship.
Yeah. Just like
discipleship.
Like loving on people, and where they look at, I don't care if you're Muslim, Jew, atheist, whatever. I want that same love to those people, to whoever.
Because that's how you win them to Christ at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's through that love.
And if we've got a problem if there is a problem where people see the church as the opposite of that, that's a us problem.
Yeah, but also I feel like, man, the enemy lies. The enemy lies to people. There's a veil over people's eyes. There's a excuse-driven mindset of why they don't go to church and why the church is this and Christians are this. And I don't know. I feel like I don't trust that. I don't trust that whole. Even when you say perception is reality, I don't believe that's true. I think, especially after seeing what we've seen in the last 10 years here with genders and pronouns, and I think I'm a cat. Like, perception is not reality. It's like there's subjective truths and there's objective truths. And I believe that there's more to come when it comes to this like ideology that exists right now. But that's obviously for a whole nother subject. But also I believe that I think the church is doing better than those people are saying they are. But maybe they haven't experienced that yet in their own like experience with Christians, and that saddens me.
For sure.
But to like generalize it as like the whole, American church.
I think there's a church. I think there's a little bit of truth, there's somewhere in the middle. Right. And I think that, like you said, like, like people, I'm a cat, whatever, like moderation is key to everything. Right. I can't roll with anybody that is extreme on any side. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can't, I just don't like, it's like, I want to be like, shut up. Like both sides, like both sides of our country right now. That is the extreme right, the extreme left. I just want to be like, no, stop talking. Like both of you, like put your phone down. Just go hang out with your family. Like literally, like put TikTok down, put Twitter down. Stop getting on Facebook fighting with each other.
I know.
Stop sharing these things that are wrong on both sides. It's just made up stuff. Like let's just like go outside. Go outside.
Go outside.
Go
on a hike.
Like go lift some weights or something. I don't get that aggression out somewhere. I don't know what it is.
No, for sure.
And so I think that is where it is. And I fall victim to that too sometimes, where it's that, I've had those conversations like with my mom and stuff. And I know that it probably bothers her to where it's like, well, you got to look at like Jesus, not the man, not the church, not human beings, but look at Jesus or whatever. I'm like, I get that. But that's all I'm saying is I want a church that like,
that pursues holiness, that pursues the teachings of Jesus, that lives out the gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want a pastor that's making $750,000. Like no, you shouldn't be, you don't need a private jet. I don't want that. I don't want you living in a mansion. That's just not for me. Cool. More power to you. Make your money. Do whatever you want. It's just not who I want leading the service that I'm doing. I don't want preachers on either sides telling me who I should be voting for.
Do you want money? Do you want wealth?
Yeah.
So why can't your pastor have wealth?
I'm perfectly fine with a pastor making money if they write a book. I'm not okay with a pastor selling his book in the bookstore at the church that he works at. I'm perfectly fine with a pastor being some amazing speaker and he charges X amount of dollars. I just don't think that a church should be paying you that type of a salary is my issue.
No, I definitely think
I think it should be live comfortably. You make if a pastor makes $150K a year, cool. I don't think that they should be I just don't think that you should be having a house, you should have 5 houses off of a church, off of tithes.
No, for sure.
And
I agree with that. I think everybody can agree with that. The book thing, I think that's different. I mean, when you have, like, let's say, you go do a comedy show, you have merch there. It's like, why would you not have the thing that you sold, that you've created or that you've written for the flock that is yours? It's like, and why would you not like be okay with those people buying it? I
don't know, man. I've gone to some churches to where like, it's like, okay, we're doing the worship, and then like it's not an intermission, but that little like 2 minutes in between worship and announcements, and they're flashing stuff on the screen, and it's like got the pastor's book and then a promo code or whatever. And I was like, that just doesn't sit right with me.
Really?
Because I just feel like you've made it about that pastor. You've made this service about that pastor getting a little bit of money, and I just don't like that. I just think that it turns it into it's the pastor's show. The first time I ever noticed this is that I grew up in a real small church. I'm talking like maybe 125 members.
Wow, yeah, okay, very small.
Maybe 150 or whatever. To where like we went and had lunch with the pastor, dinner with the pastor, whatever. Right? Like he was just a pastor. He wasn't some celebrity.
Mhm.
And then I remember I went with my sister when she was in college to church, and it was like a much larger church. And then afterwards, like we went to eat, and the way they were talking about this pastor is like they were talking about like Justin Timberlake. The other day, I don't remember what his name was. It was Bob Smith. The other day, I was at Kroger, and Bob Smith walked by me, and I'm like, well, who's that? And they're like, that's our pastor. I was like, okay, so you didn't just like go dap him up, like, you know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, and it's like, no, well, of course I wouldn't. It's like, you know, and it's like,
That
that's
shouldn't be like that.
weird.
That is weird for sure.
You know, like I've heard pastors having like bodyguards. You got a bodyguard. Like, you're not a celebrity. Like, you know, like
I think with the way it's so easy for people to find the content of pastors now. Like there's this guy named Anthony Mitchell in Atlanta at 2911 Church or something like that, or 2811 Church. And this dude was in the shadows for 12 years, like not like just building the church, just helping behind the scenes. He got an opportunity to preach. They slapped the camera on him like they did with everybody else that was ever at that church and started just posting the sermons. This dude blew up, like just from what he is preaching. And now there's 6,000 people coming to this church in this residential area. And the whole residential area is like, yo, there's way too much traffic here. There's way too much cars here. You know, and this is like outside of his, like, he's not like pursuing it, but it's happening because like, I feel like when God breathes on something and he gives favor to certain people to lead a large group of people to the truth, to the gospel, it's like, that's what kind of comes with the territory, right? And so you might say like, why do they have a bodyguard? But also, bro, the people on the internet and people just in general are like crazy. Like you just said, like that girl was like fanboying over this like pastor, right? Imagine that with somebody that's like hateful or
that's
like,
true.
You know what I mean?
That's
So it's like, man, I don't know. And if I'm not qualified to throw these hands myself, like I'm gonna hire somebody maybe that's a little bit more qualified.
That's a good point. Like, you know, especially with the change of, I'm looking at that because that was 20 years ago. You know what I mean? But I do see where you're coming from with the change of how, I mean, heck, anybody can be a celebrity now. That
I know,
you can do it on your own, right? So,
I don't think that's what they're seeking. I feel like that's kind of what happens when
sure.
Because even like think of Martin Luther King. You know, it's like he was a reverend. You know, and like his reverend has got his stuff got so big and so, you know, bold, and his speeches became so known that he became a celebrity. I don't even think he was going for that. You know, sometimes things just happen with the anointing that God gives you.
I think that, you know, I think your church can blow up, and I think that happens, right? Because there's just like anything. If you have a gift, you have a gift.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you do next with it is what I'm watching. Do you remember? You know who Francis Chan is?
I do, yeah.
The author.
Yeah,
or he's a pastor too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
Crazy
if this
Love.
Crazy Love. I don't know if this is still the case, but I do know that when I was reading that book, that you know their church got big, and his thing is that we're gonna meet in an amphitheater. We're not gonna have some massive building. We're putting that money into missions. We're putting that money into the community. We're going to do that, and that dude could be a multimillionaire. And his church could have the lasers and the awesome stuff in it and everything like that. But his choice was to give back. And that's what I'm looking for. That heart.
Francis Chan's different.
You know what I mean?
Dude, I heard this story about Francis Chan and it blew my mind. He went and he performed at the same spot that Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. He went out there to preach in Washington, and it was packed. He was like 150,000 people came out there to like see him preach. And this dude sat at the end of like the stage and just read the book of Hebrews from start to finish, and then got off stage. He didn't preach. He just read the word of God to 150,000 people. Yeah. And then dipped.
He's a different type of guy. And like, I'm not saying, you know, I guess I am saying this, but
I guess I am saying this.
You know, I am saying this. That's what I'm looking for. You know what I mean? And I just think that we get money is it's the reason why money is the root of all evil. It's why sometimes, you know, I had this conversation with, I don't remember who it was, but we were talking about like, as anything gets bigger, we won't even put the church in it. Anything gets bigger, that's when cover-ups begin. Right? Because like, I'll use my podcast as an example. All right. At one point I had a producer, so I had one employee. Okay. If that podcast goes away because something happens, some scandal happens, one person loses their job, right? But let's say my podcast blows the F up and I got a whole team. I got a market, you know, I'm now employing, 50 people. Well, you gotta now you're like that's when like cover-ups happen. That's when like you start doing some things that you're like, that because the money gets involved and you're starting to worry about it. And that's my concern with things when like there's so much money coming in and out of places. Like I won't even say a church where you start seeing people making decisions that are super questionable.
I understand. Yeah, and people try to protect their bottom line. Even we see stuff with like, a network. If something happens like a scandal, they'll try to have things like NDA signed and in-house representation and in-house meetings to kind of like, how do we make sure that this doesn't get out there publicly? Like a lot of that exists, to protect the brand, to protect the bottom line, and that's not good because that's like that's compromising morality and the gospel for your own security, and your own finances and the impact that can make. So I for sure see that, man. I do believe that there is scripture that talks about like the I think it's in Psalms or Proverbs where it says like the wealth of the wicked will turn hands over to the righteous. And I do feel like the body of Christ needs to adapt a mindset of more abundance and more prosperity rather than lack, and like being offended or not okay with people that are in the body of Christ making money, because I think money makes the world move, right, from one thing to the next. And like you're saying with Francis Chan, like he wanted that money to be used for missions and outreach, which I also agree with that wholeheartedly. But also I do believe that as a believer, you should be pursuing that so that you can do more things, not pursuing that only. You should be pursuing Christ, but you should be welcoming to receive that blessing for him to do more for other people, for even your own family, like taking care of them, that's very important in the kingdom as well. So I'm in the belief that like, I believe that Christians should be okay with having money and having
I think there's nothing wrong with having money.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having money.
Just don't be compromised by it.
I like money.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? I love money. Like, I mean, who doesn't? I don't think there's anything wrong with the people in your church having money. I just think that let's make sure that if our pastor makes $1 million, we're doing 10 million in outreach. Like, you know what I mean? Like let's make sure that we're giving that much more. If we pay our pastor $1 million, that's because we bring in 150 mil. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's my whole point with it. Like, I don't like, you shouldn't be balling and everybody else is squalling. Yes. Yeah. Like you shouldn't be killing it and then you won't open up your church for flood victims. You know what we're talking about. No, that's south of I-45. That's a good word, bro. And I believe that God is like, he's bringing us back to holiness. The Bible says that the judgment of the Lord comes to the house of God first. And I think we've seen a lot of like ministers fall over the last, decade. We've seen kind of a shift in the church. We've seen more of Gen Z come into the real Christ than we expected, and having a heart for truth. And that's what Jesus says. He says the truth will set you free. So I hope that the truth continues to rest on people's hearts, including pastors, leaders, churches, and they do the right thing. And we're able, as the body of Christ, to lead people to the faith, not away from the faith, with how we treat them. And we do love on people in all situations and all circumstances. Yeah, for sure. Well, Michael, this was a great conversation, bro. I'm pumped about your special. I'm pumped that God is he seems like he's accelerating you every year to do more and more shows and just give more and more joy. And I believe that you have the gift from him for that. So I'm excited for you, man. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. If you're listeners, you want to say a prayer for me, pray that I find a church that I'm looking for. That's all I can ask for. Absolutely. Have you ever heard of Upper Room, by the way? Mm-mm. Where's that at? I think it's in where you're at in Dallas. We'll look it up after the show and see where it's at, because I hear great things. They have great worship, and you say you love worship, so they have great worship. And I've had people literally drive from like Burleson to Dallas just to go to that church. So. For sure. And there's also one there called Mercy Culture in Dallas as well. That's really good too. Cool. So I'll put you on a couple churches and maybe test the waters. But all right, everybody, if you're listening right now, and I'm thankful that you're here, make sure you go check out the special on YouTube. I Like Your Jesus. It is it's super funny, and obviously we showed a clip, so you'll see more of that on there as well. And make sure you share it around with your people if you enjoy it, and smash the like button so they book them for another special. And your podcast, tell the people a little bit about that. So into that as well. I have two podcasts. One is called Back in the Day. Zach was was a guest on that. That's where I interview people and they tell me stories from back in their glory days. So I always have a topic that I want to go over each year. Like one time we did like greatest athletic achievement or time you got in trouble with your parents, something like that. And then I have another one called the Sonny G and Mike P Show. And that is a podcast that I do with my best friend where we just kind of, think of it more of like a radio show. We have like segments and different things.
Nice.
Do stories and stuff. So
yeah, I really enjoyed being on Back in the Day. And I think it's a great concept for a show because everybody likes to relive the glory days and tell the stories, man. So it's a really cool concept of what you got going on there. So keep it up, man. I'm a big believer in that pod. So, and everybody, man, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget, if you're in the DFW like we're talking about today and you need a job, you can go ahead and reach out to my friend Sonia at Express Employment Professionals at 817-487-4900. I always leave the link in the description for you because I love to help people help people. So make sure you go and you get plugged into them if you need a job or you need talent for your company. So much appreciation to them for partnering with us. And for you listening right now, don't forget, I feel weird selling stuff right now. You know, I have a book.
No. You sell it all you want. This is where you should sell. No.
21 Days in Africa here at the bookstore at allikebirdsministry.com. We also have hats. Get your hat or don't, because, we don't need bread around here. We're doing great. But man, no, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so yet on whatever platform you are. And if you want to share this around, make sure you do that, man. Get the word out there. Get the comedy, the good jokes and the good conversation that we had about comedy out there. And don't forget, I got a comedy special on YouTube as well called Crackers in Church. And that's one of my favorite things I've ever produced. And so shout out Taylor Perkey for coming with me to Arizona to film it. It was awesome. So good stuff, y'all. We'll see you on the next one. Don't forget, I like the Bible and I like words. So therefore, I like birds. Sponsorship. So what does sponsorship look like for your business and I Like Birds podcast? Well, it's really creative the way we do our sponsorships. Number one, we showcase your brand to our entire audience on all of our platforms. We have a screen that shows your graphic and your logos so that everybody knows where to go to for your business. We also put your website and anything else that you want listed in the episode description of every video. And as our audience grows, you grow with us. And my favorite reason for you to sponsor is you're supporting a Kingdom First ministry who's trying to reach more souls for the kingdom of God. I would love to have a meeting with you if you would like your business sponsored, and we can have a meeting, whether it be over a cup of coffee or we can do a Zoom call, whatever you prefer, and we can work out the details and we can find creative ways to promote your business on my show. So reach out now and I'll see you there.